There we go. Okay. So again, welcome on this beautiful fall day. I am really pleased to see folks carving out time in their very busy lives to join us on the lunch hour for today's workshop for parents. I'm going to start with just a few logistics before I introduce today's speaker. I'll start with introducing myself. I am Ramsey Mahavitz. I am a resource teacher here in the Department of Special Ed's Family Support Service office. I'll say a little bit about our office. We are dedicated in family support services to providing families with information and resources to help them feel equipped to be equal partners with the school system and fully engaged in the decision-making process for their children's education. We do that through things like this, which you've logged on and joined today. We have parent workshops. We're always here also and available for one-on-one private consultation when you have questions that you may not want to bring to a workshop. And so I'm going to share a little bit about that on the next couple of slides. If you are coming into this English language workshop and you would like the support of the closed caption option, this over here, it's unfortunately not one button, but if you hover over those three dots in the bottom right-hand corner and go to settings, that's when you can go to the closed caption. It's not perfect, but you will have your native language translation there, and that can really help with comprehension. So if that is something that you want, that slide is up there now. Okay, we have people are continuing to join. I'm going to go to one more logistics slide, Dr. Taub, and then I will introduce you more formally and hand it over. Just bear with me. Oh, quick plug before I do logistics. Another thing that our office does with supporting families is, as well as these workshops, we do hold resource fairs. If anyone lives in the Southwest area and or is, able to drive, our next school day, since we have these professional development days, is actually Tuesday. So I just wanted to give a last minute plug that there is a special education resource fair at Lansdowne Elementary on Tuesday from 4:30 to 6:30. And we'll have great vendors there, workshop on understanding IEP. That's a live workshop. And with some binder giveaways that we're going to do there and some pizza at that event. So that's a quick plug for that. Logistics for our workshop today. So we are recording. I do just want to remind folks that it's to help with a distraction-free workshop, it's best to be muted and have your camera off while our presenter is talking. But then we will certainly have some time for questions at the end. If you can't find the Q&A area, that's fine to drop some questions into the chat as an option too, but I am now finding, if you use this, I call it the waffle, those 9 dots in the corner, and you go to Q&A, it's a great way to put a question in and I can track whether it's been answered. If we don't get to answer anything, we will make sure that we reach back out to give you answers at the end. Again, because we are recording, we want to say if your questions today, when you bring them, please avoid any identifying information so that you wouldn't name, a student's name or a teacher's name or administrator or school name, and just have those general questions. But again, we do offer private consultation and we can certainly get into those kind of details. So in the orange box is the way to reach out to Family Support Services. You can call us, you can email us, and we'll make time to go over some specific concerns or questions you might have. All right. Those are the logistics. And if you logged on late, I do want to say again, we did get started a little late today. And thanks for your patience. Um, Today we are very excited because we have with us Dr. Taub, and I meant to put a graphic for this. I want to really thank Down Syndrome Association for helping making this connection and bringing Dr. Taub to us. She is an expert in inclusive education and change systems. She's dedicated to creating better learning opportunities for students with disabilities. Her work draws from years of experience as a teacher, a researcher, a professor, and mentor and leader in educational transformation, as well as being a mom. Most important job for all of us, if you are a mom. So without further ado, I will stop sharing and let her get started. Okay. Are you with us, Dr. Todd? Uh-oh.
Having a little problem with sharing because my computer is telling me I'm not allowed to record, which is interesting.
Oh, let me double check and make sure. I think we did that at the beginning, but we had so many you are still a co-host. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm doing the recording.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't want me to share my screen because it's afraid that it's being recorded. So let's see if I can get that to work. I apologize.
No problem. Never a dull moment, right? We had no volume working. We're getting it together though. And for those of you who are waiting while she works on that, I just want to reiterate again, this is a casual event, and we hope that this fits in nicely. We try to choose that lunch hour and consider this a lunch and learn. So, pop open those containers, open up your water bottle, heat up your food, pour another cup of coffee if that's what you want. And no,
Guys, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Woo! Woo! Okay.
But the screen share because of recording.
Let's see.
There.
Ooh, the infinity world. Let me give you this one. Oh, no, it's not giving me that one either. Present something else. Here we go. There we go, guys. I apologize. It's nothing like fun in the morning or afternoon. So let me just jump right in and tell you a little bit about kind of who I work with and who I'm talking about today. I've worked with kids across so many disabilities. There's been kids with extensive support needs. So those kids who take the alternate assessment, we call them the 1%. They tend to be in life skills classes. I also work with kids who don't take the alternate assessment and take the regular assessment. My kids are the ones who are on the regular assessment, but they have different disabilities. So I've got one who has autism and ADHD. I've got one who has autism, and I've got one who has ADHD. So we kind of bring it all together in our house. And I was in education way before I ever had kids. So being on this other side of the table was disturbing to me, because if I didn't know what I knew, I never would have gotten the services that I got for my kids. And I realized that that's really not okay. So that's why I do things like this, because it's really vital that we all know what our kids are able to do and what they're legally allowed to do. So what I'd like you to do is either take a little screenshot of this, or you can join slido.com with this number 5694448, and just type in some words or sentences, whichever you prefer. What is your vision for your child's life? What is it that you want your kid to be able to do or experience? What do you hope to see in their future? Because I think that all education plans start with this vision. So again, you can go to slido.com and then type in 5694448. And I see people are starting to jump on. I know I threw you for a loop right off the bat, giving you something to do. But I'd love to hear or see, what are some of the things that you hope for your child? I love this. I want my kid to be happy and successful, to live whatever life they want to live, social and happy. These are great. Independent. Yes. I hear you on that, right? And we know that independence does not mean that nobody ever helps you, right? Because we all get help. I know I expect help in my house from my husband and my kids. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't. But for the most part, we all expect some kind of help. These are so key. So to be able to fully be him, to be fully himself. Oh, I love that. We have worked so hard on that in my family, that having a disability does not mean that you're less than, just that you're different than. I want him to feel secure in his own skin and to be happy. These are great. You guys, I love these visions you have for your kids. They're so important. And so how do we do this? How do we help our kids to be happy and successful and social and to live whatever life they want to live and be secure in themselves and their own skin? This is a lifelong process. We know as adults that sometimes we don't feel 100% secure in our own skins, but we're working on it, right? And part of that working on it is being able to be part of your community, whatever your community may be, right? I want my child to experience everything life has to offer. These are fabulous. This is what I want for my kids. This is what I want for every kid. And this is why inclusive practices are so important. Because if we want our kids to have these opportunities, they have to be in a society, in a community that is welcoming and supportive and is okay with them being in their own skin. So much of school, especially for kids with disabilities, is about compliance instead of learning. And different is absolutely normal. I'm going to give you guys about 30 more seconds to finish this one up, and then we're going to go to the next one. But continue to think about this. We're going to come back to it. All of these pieces are important because let me tell you about Evan. Now, that's not his real name and that's not his real picture, because he is a real kid in a state that you guys know well, and I don't want to out anyone. But Evan spent preschool to fifth grade in a separate classroom where he's basically might see his peers during specials like music or art or PE, but he wasn't really part of a general education class, right? Evan uses a communication system, an AAC system, which you can see here is a little iPad. Evan's typing on his iPad type thing. And Evan really didn't have a lot of friends. He didn't speak, right? Which is fine. But he wasn't non-speaking. He could speak, he just didn't. Evan would sometimes use his AAC, but often didn't. And he spent a lot of time kind of shuffling down the hall, eyes down, not really interacting with people. The work you see on the right is a picture of a digital clock and a traditional clock. And a lot of Evan's work looked like this from about second grade on. And he would be given basically this exact same worksheet over and over and over again to be able to connect digital clocks to regular clocks. And that's what he worked on day after day after day. Well, when Evan entered middle school, he went to a school that was working on building inclusive practices. And they said, you know what? We are going to shift how we use our people. We're going to shift how we provide services. And we are going to see where we can get Evan to be successful. So they started with the idea that he could and would be successful in general education. So Evan, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, Evan had a paraprofessional who kind of went with him everywhere. And she really became a barrier to him making friends. So when they first started doing this inclusive practices work with him, he would go out with one other kid from his special education classroom, and he would also have a paraprofessional who would go with them. And at first, when we first started doing this, the paraprofessional would spend a lot of her time right next to Kevin, right there, repeating everything the teacher said, making sure Kevin had all of his materials right there, and basically prompting him constantly to answer or to do something. And this cartoon on the left is a cartoon of a little boy Joey in a wheelchair with an adult around him, and all the kids are kind of around him pushing back against a force field. And the cartoon says Joey noticed a mysterious force field around his assistant that children could not break through. And this is really true. I've heard lots of stories. There's one great story about somebody who was doing some inclusive work, and he and his grad assistants at the very beginning of inclusive practices went into the classroom in science, and they helped the kids do the lab. And their kids were very studious and very on task and doing everything they were supposed to do, and the other kids were flicking worm pieces because they were dissecting a worm. And the science teacher said, you guys can't come back. And they were like, what? No, your student belongs in your class. And they said, no, your student can come back. I don't want this many adults in my classroom. And you prevented the students in your group from doing what everybody else was doing. So that's what we found. And that's what I always seem to find when I work with paraprofessionals, is that they're great people. They're very important, but their job is not supposed to be to hover over a student. Their job is supposed to be helping to build independence. And that requires that everybody on the IEP team understand the paraprofessional's job, because you never want to look like you're not doing your job, right? And when you're in a classroom, people are watching you all the time. So as a paraprofessional, if somebody wasn't clear about my job, I would be hovering over that student too. So one of the myths that we had to get through when we first started doing this work with Evan and his school was this myth that when a student has a significant cognitive disability, their curriculum is their IEP, meaning they focus exclusively on their annual IEP goals. And that's what led to the type of work you saw with Evan working on the clocks, because one of his IEP goals was telling time. Now, Evan has an intellectual disability. Evan is one of those students who was on the alternate assessment and was working towards an alternate diploma. And we had to really do a lot of education with family, with teachers, with principals, with paraprofessionals, that IDA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, which used to be No Child Left Behind, require that all students make progress towards grade level learning standards. And when I see this now, I see this as kids going into separate classrooms and getting alternate curriculum that may or may not be connected to what everybody else is doing. And so that was one of the big pieces we had to shift. So this is what Evan's life looked like in middle school when he started in this inclusive room, or this inclusive school. Now he was working on social studies, and the question everybody was answering was, how did the interaction of European, African, and Native cultures lead to conflict, change, and or cooperation? And over on the right, what you see is a graphic organizer that the class had, And for Evan and some other students and the other student in his class who had intellectual disabilities, they were given pictures to match with these, and the people were already in the graphic organizer. And then the interesting facts or the definition or how they dealt with something with, change or things like that, those were on little strips of sentence strips that they could just move into the different places. Right? So they didn't have to write all of this, they didn't have to do all of this, but they did learn one fact about each of these pieces. Whereas the other students might be learning multiple facts, Evan and his friend who were from that special ed class learned this fact. But here's the piece that was really amazing to me. Evan's whole demeanor started to change. He started standing up. He started walking through the halls with his head up. He no longer shuffled his feet. He no longer looked down all the time. Evan had friends in general ed and in special ed. Evan talked with lots of kids at recess time and at lunchtime and in each of his specials classes that he still went to. Evan was really becoming a huge jokester. And when the class was playing Jeopardy, Evan started winning. Like, not because he had some special bonus time or anything like that. Playing against the other kids, Evan could win, right? This was amazing. So here he is. This is high school. And in high school, they actually determined that Evan could probably work on his standard diploma if he had the right supports and services. So he is now very close to getting his standard diploma. He's a senior this year. And he's playing with friends. He's got lots of friends. He's got a girlfriend. His AAC he uses sometimes, but he often uses his voice now. His AAC he uses to help people understand when he's stuck, right? So if somebody's not understanding what he's saying or things like that, that's when he pulls out his AAC. So is this like miraculous? Is this amazing? Is this fabulous? Yes. Is it just a fluke? No. This is what we see all the time. So there was a study by Kathy G and several of her colleagues where they matched kids by disability label, by IQ, by socioeconomic status, by race, as many factors as they could. And some of those students were in separate classes, segregated classes, and some were in inclusive classes. And what they found was after the 4 years that they did this research, the students in the separate class, 27% increased their literacy skills, 27% increased their communication skills, and 67% increased math skills. At the same time, though, 7% of those students in that separate class regressed in literacy and communication. On the other hand, the kids who were the exact matches that they could find, 100% increased their skills in literacy, communication, and math when they were in inclusive classes. This is the kind of research that we have that shows us over and over again that kids with disabilities, even kids with significant, extensive support needs, do better in inclusive classes. We know they do better because of they have better communication skills, and they have communication opportunities that are more than just answering questions. Often what I see with kids with AAC or with limited communication skills is it's always a yes, no question or a what's this or point to. It's never really a conversation. When they're in inclusive classrooms, they actually get to have more opportunities to be the speaker and to initiate conversations. Their academics are better reading skills, better math skills, and this is so important if you have kids who have problems generalizing to different settings, they're able to use those skills in new ways. When my daughter was in middle school, they kept telling me that she had to take this class on social skills. And they kept saying, well, it's a separate class where they go and learn social skills. And then my daughter got in trouble and said some inappropriate things to her teacher. And that pushed them even more to tell us she has to take this separate class in social skills. She has to take this separate class. And I kept saying that's not going to happen. That's not what the research supports. That's not what will work for her. It's not going to happen. And I really don't want you to bring it up anymore. And they kept pushing and pushing. And finally, I said, listen, you can ask my daughter what she's supposed to do when she's mad, and she will tell you. And that's what that class is going to teach her. But when she's in the moment, she's not able yet to do it. She needs support. She needs help. She needs strategies. That's what she has to learn. And she's not going to learn that in a separate class. Additionally, we know that people who are included feel like a part of the community and they have more independence. And their IEP goals tend to be better, right? They practice skills in natural routines. They learn more of their essential skills in more places. And so really it's important to know that inclusion does not have an entrance exam. You don't have to first have your behavior under control. You don't first have to have communication under control. You don't have to have all the grade level skills. Everyone can be included with their same aged friends with and without disabilities. Everyone. And we find that when people are included, their behavior gets better. We also know that they have better post-secondary outcomes when they're included. They're more likely to be working in the community, living independently, contributing members of adult society, and part of a friend group. So I've worked as a job coach. I've worked as a lot of things, but I've worked as a job coach where I would pick up people from their group homes or from their apartments, and I would take them to their job if they didn't drive. And then I would support them during the job to make sure that they stayed on task and other things. And I can say that being a part of a friend group was so vital for these people, for all people, right? We all want to go someplace where people say hi to us and talk to us and welcome us, even if we're quirky or we're different or we have a disability or the color of our skin is different. We all want to be part of that community. And we're not going to be part of a community if we spend all of our educational lives in separate settings and then expect to be included afterwards, because nobody's used to us. And sadly, when you aren't used to people, you're scared of them. And so really building inclusive classrooms is the way to build inclusive communities. Where Evan lives, one of the things that one of their speech therapists does, which I think is phenomenal, they actually won an award in part because of this. She goes and works with the local businesses and shows them how to use the AAC so that when those now adults go and try to get jobs, there are people at local businesses who've already had experience with communication systems, who already know some of the basics of communicating with somebody who uses communication systems. That's part of building an inclusive community. Also, you need to know the laws on your side. IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, says that special education is a service, not a place. Services your child gets do not dictate your child's class. Anytime you're in an IEP meeting and somebody says, well, your child has autism or intellectual disability or whatever, they go to the autism class, you should immediately stop that IEP meeting and say, it sounds like you're not individualizing for my child, because they're not. They need to be able to show how the services that they provide can't be provided in gen ed. And let me tell you, they can always be provided in gen ed. So when we talk about environments, we talk about general education classes. That's the least restrictive. And then resource room, where you get some pull-out time, and then separate classes is more restrictive. Separate schools are even more restrictive. So our goal is to get people in the least restrictive environment. Does that mean that they're never going to have pull-out, never going to have opportunities for some smaller group instruction or things like that? No. You know, one of the things I love about my daughter's school, and it's a gen ed school, is that they have what's called the calm classroom or the calm lunch. And it's for kids who sensory wise or whatever reason just can't be in that gen ed lunchroom. Because if you've ever been in a gen ed lunch, you know they're chaos. They're insane. There's so much noise. That's too much for her. And so it's a built-in time in her day where she goes with other kids with and without disabilities to the lunchroom and has a quiet moment of lunch. They also built in, she's in high school now, and so everybody has a study hall type thing. They call it Raise, but everybody has their own study hall. And they just built that in. That's her one special education placement, is that study hall. And it's an opportunity for her to get specific instruction on IEP goals. It's her opportunity to get specific support on all of her content that she's learning. But it's just part of the classroom or the school routine. So am I saying your kids should never leave gen ed? Ideally. But reality, kids need breaks too. The least restrictive environment in the law says that all children should be taught together and that students cannot be removed from general education classes unless supplementary aids and services do not work in those gen ed classrooms. So a lot of times what I see is kids start preschool or pre-K in a separate place because that's all the district has or the state has. But then they get kind of funneled into separate classrooms for the rest of their educational career. We really want to think about how can we provide these services? How can we provide these supports in gen ed? The other piece that we had to talk to with and I've done a lot of systems change work. This is one that really comes out a lot. It's these myths about the separate settings, that we're going to spend more time on instruction in a separate setting. Well, actually, that's not true. The research really clearly shows that more time is spent on adults talking to each other in separate settings and on non-academic and non-IEP skills. And let me tell you, I visited hundreds, probably thousands of classrooms in my life. And I don't believe that I have a magical superpower that means that I can time my visits for the exact moment that everybody happens to be on a break. And yet when I go visit separate classrooms, easily 90% of the time, they're on a break. So this more in separate settings is not real. They're going to get more trained teachers. Well, if you're doing things correctly, your trained teachers should be working together. And in special education, those teachers probably don't have content knowledge that your gen ed grade level teachers have. And if you don't have that content knowledge, it's harder to break things down. And I know this as a teacher because I did not have math content knowledge when I first started. And so when I tried to explain things to kids, I explained it incorrectly. Generalizability, we talked about this a little bit, being able to do things in multiple ways, across multiple people and places. That doesn't really happen in separate settings because everything is so structured and routine. And so it doesn't give kids an opportunity to practice. Separate settings also don't give us more natural supports. Natural supports are things like rules that are up on the classroom for all students, peers with and without disabilities who help each other, routines that are part of the natural day. Those should be all natural supports. And then the other one I hear a lot is safety. If I don't put my kid in a separate setting, they won't be safe. Well, unfortunately, most of the bad actors that we see in education tend to be in separate settings. Not because they're bad people, it's just that's an easy population to target when you're frustrated and you don't know what you're doing or you're whatever, because they can't tell their parents that something happened. And I never, ever want a kid to be in danger because of that. Does that mean that all bad things happen in special ed? Not at all. Let me be very clear. Special education is amazing, great teachers, fabulous people who are trying to help, but we need to rethink how we're doing that instruction, how we're providing that support. And we want to make sure that our students, our kids, have the ability to have other people looking out for them too, not just the adults. One,
Dr. Todd.
yes,
Hi,
yes,
it's Ramsey. I just thought I was going to do a quick
yes,
interruption.
please.
One, the time check. It is 12:15, and I know we started late, but we'll do our best for those
To
who
end on time.
planned that time. And I did have that poll. We didn't talk about
I'm
what
so
time.
sorry.
No, it's okay if you wanted to, and we can also skip that if you wanted the
No,
setting.
let's go for it.
All right, I'm going to hit launch, and then I'll just warn participants that I think it pops up down at the bottom of the screen, and you have to be ready for it. If you miss it, here, let me do it. Okay. So there is a
A new
poll.
plan has been launched.
Yes. Where in the school is your child's IEP currently implemented? It's just this one question with a few choices. If you missed it, if it popped up and disappeared, you can also go to that thing I call the waffle and choose poll, and you'll see it there. Great.
And you have to scroll down to vote, just so you know. Once you hit the little radio button, you then have to scroll down to click the vote button.
Oh, thank you for that.
Mhm.
We have about 7 votes are in. Votes. They're not votes, but I think this is helpful.
Yeah, this
Just
is great
for
to
you
know.
to know from your audience as you're going through all of this incredible information, the research, and you know, who logged on today and where their child's IEP is
Yeah.
being implemented. The full continuum of service
Yes.
placement options is it's always in that decision-making process when your child has an IEP. There shouldn't ever be an all or nothing. So,
Right.
we do have students who qualify for intensive services in a separate setting. So we know that we have students in all 3 of these, but the first one is most of the day, general ed. The second one is most of the day in a separate class. And the third option is a combination. All right, I think we'll end the poll and let you get back to it.
No, thank you so much. I
Yes,
kind of get
and I
rolling sometimes
assume
and forget.
everyone sees the results, but I'll just say in case it's not on your screen that in today's group, the majority of our audience, their children are in a general ed setting, 1 in a separate and 2 in a combination of general ed with pullout. So across the
That's
board,
great.
we have everybody. All
That's
right, now
great. So, Ramsey, did you send out the resources already, or are you doing that after?
I sent this exact handout,
This one.
the
Okay.
Spanish and English version. I will send any additional handouts and a copy of today's PowerPoint after. But this one,
Awesome.
if they happen to look at their email this morning, came out this morning.
Awesome. So before I go to next anything else, I would love to know what questions you have, concerns, things that you want me to talk about.
Is it okay if I just speak instead of chat?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll just give you a brief background. I am a mom to 3 kids. My youngest is 5.5 years old. He has Down syndrome. He's currently in a general education classroom in kindergarten, and he's doing extremely well. He does get some push-in services and some pull-out services. And I guess my concern is that he is speaking and he does use an iPad sometimes for
Mhm.
communication, but he can't really tell me what is going on during the day. And there is a
Okay.
communication log, and the teachers are
That's
really
great.
great about updating it, which is awesome. But I sometimes get concerned that maybe he's being pulled out more than he should be.
Got it.
You know, I obviously, like, we want him to meet that 80% threshold of being in the general education environment.
Right.
But like, how do I age old question, right? How do I figure out what's going on? Like, what's really going on? You know, is he really being pulled out, you know,
Right.
more than that 20%? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes. So my first thought is, if you're allowed to go and observe, that's always a great way to find out what's really going on.
Okay. I guess the other thing is, like, I'm worried they're gonna, like, put on their best behavior, and then, you know,
They will.
do you know I
No,
know, and
they will.
I know they will, so, you know, how do you, like, is there a way that you can, like, really know, or, like, any signs, I guess, that you should watch out for, like,
Right.
as a parent that, you know, for a nonverbal child that can't, you know, really come home and communicate, "Hey,
Right.
you know, I didn't see my friends today because
Yep.
for half of the day, I was with, you know, so and so in a separate classroom."
Yep. Yep. I totally get it. So I would do a couple things. One, I would make it really clear to your IEP team that you recognize that sometimes things go off schedule, but you'd really like to make sure that your child's schedule is being followed as written in the IEP. The
Gotcha.
other thing I would Oh, go ahead, Ramsey.
I was just going to add also, you know, a really quick and easy way to start is just asking for a copy of the schedule. So, you know, the amount of minutes per day is on the service line in the IEP, but it'd be very helpful to see, you know, your child's daily schedule. Like it's
Yep.
after lunch for, you know, or it's
Yep.
at first thing in the morning, and knowing when in the day it is, just so you have that is the first place to start. And then
Yes.
that's all I was going to say. You
Okay.
were,
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ramsey.
I interrupted you, but yeah, I think that's really good to just start the day on start the year on the positive note and ask for
Yes.
that. They may not have made the schedule, you know, but to request that is really helpful. And it also can ask what day is speech. If you have, you know, OT, you know, when is that is really helpful for me to know.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much.
And I just want to say, I'm going to apologize. I do not usually come across as a negative Nelly person. I will admit that at the exact moment in time, I am kind of struggling with education as a whole in our country, and so maybe I'm coming off a little stronger about how to address certain issues than I normally would. So Ramsey, I appreciate that reminder that it really is best when you're working together with your team and your teachers. Um, and when I say, you know, tell them that you really want to make sure that your IEP is followed, you don't have to do it in a threatening, I'm going to sue you way. You can certainly do it in a, hey, I just want to make sure, I really think that what we've mapped out here is great. Please let me know if something shifts and you're taking them out more than we identified,
Okay.
right? The other thing that you want to do is watch what work comes home. And if you have any friends with kids in the same class, make sure that the work is similar.
Okay. That sounds
So,
good. Thank you so much.
yeah, of course.
I would like it, obviously, if other people have any questions. I have another question, but I'm gonna go on mute and make sure other people can.
A question in the chat is what data points determine the LRE or placement?
So, and somebody else can jump in. Liz, I know you're here and you're like the guru of all things. Um, one of the things, what really determines it is how much time they spend in gen ed. I mean, that's the measure it is, right? If they are pulled, if they go to other classes, things like that, that's counted as time out of gen ed. Now, being in specials with their peers, that's being in gen ed. One of the things that I sometimes see people try to do is say that, well, we've got our kid in this separate classroom that they don't ever really leave, but we have like 3 kids without disabilities who come in and work with them sometimes. That's not gen ed. And that should not be counted as gen ed. So it's how much time really that your student spends in the general education classroom with peers who are also gen ed students. That's it. That's what determines LRE, and it's based on a scale. So 80% or more is considered full-time general education. And then the next setting is 79 to 40, I think.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on it now. So if you spend 40 to 79% of your time in gen ed, that's considered the second LRE. And then the third one is 0 to 39% of your time in gen ed. And then it goes to separate schools and other placements.
And the
The
data
problem,
question that I think is coming up is a great one. And it
yeah,
really does, it is never a single source. There is no one data point. Oh, the IQ score is this
right.
number. This means that LRE should be
Oh,
this. I think
that's
it
what
is
you're asking.
important that, I think you could go on
Thank
with
you.
this answer, but I do believe that I will just start it with, it is a multiple points of discussion, data, um, you know, no single source should do that. And is there a magic number or a magic data point that fast tracks you to one? And the answer to that is no. It is
Right.
always going to be individualized, and that the members of your IEP team talk about it together.
Right.
Some people come in with preconceived patterns of how they feel, and as long, they have good justifications for it, but it is a discussion.
Yeah. That's so well put, Ramsey, and thank you for clarifying what was asked. I appreciate that. And I just want to back up what Ramsey said. IQ does not determine LRE. Disability label does not determine LRE. Grade level skills or being way below grade level does not determine LRE. So there is actually no one data point that determines whether the child should be in general ed or special education settings for certain parts of the day. It's what is it that is going to best support my child. And often what you'll hear in IEP meetings, just to make you aware, is, well, we have this autism program and it's all set up for kids like yours. Well, that's not really individualized, right? And anytime they ask your child to go to a multi-age classroom, ask them how they're ensuring that your child's getting access to grade level content, right? Because one of the things you saw with Evan was that he was getting the same work over and over and over again. That's something that typically happens in a multi-age classroom because it's hard to teach third, fourth, and fifth grade all at once. So yeah. So when I ask the teachers what issues or concerns they have with my child in class, it's frustrating to hear them list off the symptoms of his disability. Yes, it's hard to tell them that. I also don't feel like they can control bullying well. Any tips? Okay, so let's take the first part. Listing off symptoms of the disability for what's going on in class. Treat that as an opportunity to educate the teachers and the psychs and the paraprofessional and anybody else who's working with your child, and say, yes, absolutely, that is so typical of kids with X, Y, and Z. And here are some strategies, and I'm sorry that it puts you in this position to do this as a parent, but here are some strategies, or here's somebody you can talk to, or here's something that works at home that helps when this happens, right? So for instance, let's take a relatively easy one in theory. ADHD. A clear symptom of ADHD is that the child does not stay in one place and stay focused. And when I ask teachers what's going on with my kid, that's what they say. Well, he's not in place and he's not focused. Okay, well, yes, he does have ADHD, so that makes a lot of sense. What are some ways we can break up the work for him? What are some ways that we can help him learn to control his body or be more aware of his body, right? Can we do sit fidgets? Can we do this? Can we do that? Those are some options that are really helpful. And it also helps build that team piece that we're in this together, right? Like at home, I find that giving him a 5-minute break really helps him come back and focus on his homework. And in terms of controlling bullying, It's a huge issue. And it's a huge issue not just for kids with disabilities, it's a huge issue, period. Some things to think about. How is the classroom set up as a community? I really believe that communities and classrooms building belonging is vital to ensure we don't have bullying. And so when you walk into a classroom and you see things like red light, green light, yellow light for behavior things, where somebody's name is up on a board and everybody can see who misbehaved or who did what, that's not a great way to build community, because it pits. My kids used to come home and tell me which kids were on red light all the time. And it made my kids not want to be near that kid, because that kid gets in trouble all the time and I don't want to get in trouble. So looking at how that classroom is managed and thinking about how to build more community in that classroom, that's one of the things to think about. Working with the teacher on getting rid of structures that call out specific children as being quote unquote bad. And that's a whole other issue. But looking at what the school does for positive behavior supports and helping to ensure that every kid in that class has an opportunity for a positive support is really important. Sadly, I can't fix bullying in the next 3 minutes, but those are some good places to start.
It is. And I'm gonna so we're at 12:30. If you do have another slide, if folks are okay to stay on a few minutes, we did start like 10 minutes late, and I want to make sure that we try to give you that time back. But we'll hang on just a little bit more, because I know these have been great questions.
Yeah. I'm just going to send you guys to my resources rather than going through everything else. You're going to get this PowerPoint as a PDF. So you're going to have everything in here. Liz, thank you for that quote. For every student with a disability who's removed from general education, there's another student with the same disability who is included. It's not about the kid, it's about the adults. And Michael Giangreco captured that perfectly. One of the resources I put into the resource piece that you guys are going to be getting it's a myths and facts on inclusionary practices. It was built with the Ties Center and Washington State and one of the districts in Washington State. And it includes kind of 7 really key myths. There's tons of these out there. This one I love because it includes, in addition to the myth and the reality, it includes resources that you can share as a parent or you can learn more about, and things that you can share to help debunk that myth. And I like that proactive piece to it, because I'm a big fan of fixing what's wrong. So the last thing I want to leave you with is bring it back to your vision. Which path leads to your child's best future? And I'm happy to stay on and answer that last question. I know one more person had a question, so I'm happy to stay on and answer it if other people want to get off. But I just want to say thank you so much. So if anybody has a question, feel free to just unmute or whatever, and feel free to go.
I was talking when I was muted. I wanted to say what a huge treat it was to have you as a presenter today. I'm going to stop recording now and allow anyone, let's go there, stop recording, asks you 5